guys. I was going to say I'm back because that's usually how I begin my vlogs, but this is the Booktube Newbie Tag, and so this will probably be a bunch of people who have not yet seen my videos, so just hi. I'll just launch into the questions now. I know that there are 7 main questions and like 3 that have been added on. I'm answering all 10. I've rearranged them a little to suit my purposes or things that I felt made more sense to be grouped together. So yeah, I'll just get right into it. Ignore the children screaming. There are a bunch of kids in my, we have bordering backyards, and presumably the other families, their kids are shouting. Anyway, so why did you start this channel? So I originally started this channel a few years back. I was doing really bad covers. I have to update those actually, because I was recently rewatching and cringing at those. But it went from like covers to doing a vlog on being visually impaired. It's called College Life and Blindness. You should totally check that out. BT dubs. And it's a companion to my blog. And then I, decided to shift things and change things up a little bit. And in addition to vlogging, which, has taken a bit of a backseat because of Corona, I don't have as many stories. And, things like that, I decided that I wanted to get into booktube, which is something that I have been thinking about for years because I love reading. But we'll get into that with the later questions. And yeah, so my channel, I created it to ramble at a camera and hopefully inform people of things too. What are some fun and unique things you can bring to booktube? Me, I'm fun and unique. Okay, so I like to think so, and I feel like people tell me that I'm unique. I don't think they always mean it in the way that I mean it, but So I think that I can bring the perspective of a visually impaired person. I know there are other disabled booktubers that I have seen and watched their videos. I have not seen very many blind people, or I haven't seen many blind people talking about blind books. There are also not many of those, or not many books that feature blind characters, particularly fantasy, which is what I predominantly read, but that's also something that I'm going to get into with later questions. So yeah, I feel like I can bring a disabled perspective to this. My friends tell me I'm funny. I like to think that I'm funny. I think that I'm funny not in a scripted way, but in just like a ramble about life kind of way. And so hopefully I can, just entertain you. And as I said though, more so just my perspective as a disabled person, perhaps as a woman, perhaps as a Black woman. So I've got 3 different things at my disposal from which I can look at books, and sometimes none of that will factor in, and it'll just be my opinion. Sometimes it might be, I can bring entertaining friends on to also just join me and be silly as we talk about books. And yeah, so I feel like what I have to offer is in part left to be seen, because I know how I want to go about these videos. I know that I want to I'm a ranter, I'm a rambler, and actually this goes into 3. What are you most excited for about this channel? And I'm excited to rant and ramble and talk about books, whether I loved it, whether I hated it, whether I was in between about it. And I feel like just bringing that energy is one of the things that I, can and will bring to YouTube. In addition to the things that I'm excited about, I don't leave a lot of reviews. I try to, especially for the first books in series. As an aspiring author, I am aware of the potential importance for book reviews, and all of that. But for me, sometimes I'll immediately have thoughts. Sometimes it'll be over the course of a few days that I'll be composing my review. But I really enjoy talking about books, and that's also why I mentioned too, sometimes I might bring a friend along, because I also like having dialogues about it rather than just writing it. I love writing, I do, but I also love talking. And yeah, the intersection of books, which I love, and talking about them, which I also love. Okay, so I'm lumping 4, 5, 8, 9, and 10 together because they are all about reading and, you know, where you read, how you read, all that good stuff. So 4, why do you love reading? Why do I love reading? Actually, I'll put 4 with 8. When did you start reading? So I love reading because it was something that was, you know, a lot of people say it was an escape, and yes, to some extent it was, but it was also a bonding experience with my sister. So I started reading children's books, you know, so I am visually impaired. For the record, just to let you guys know, moving on forward, I just use blind and visually impaired very casually. I can see a little out of one eye, but oftentimes it's easier, less work, less syllables, to just say blind. And I feel like it does confuse some people when, you know, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see, but then I say I'm blind, and, you know, yeah. And so, you know, there are a lot of children's books that had like Braille and print, and so I enjoyed looking at the colorful pictures while I read the Braille. But also in school, whenever they would be making room for new books, they just be like, oh, does, you know, anyone want to take any home? And they would send me home with like bags full of books, and I would just like plop them all down and have my sister, I have 2 sisters, but my middle sister, read them all to me. And like my doctor, he would send me home with books, and you know, so people were just kind of always giving me books, and I loved the stories that could be found in them. I loved when my sister read it. Sometimes she would get, you know, really animated. She would get really involved, invested in these stories that she was, you know, reading to me. I also recently remembered that we'd have like a pseudo school setting. I would, you know, we'd like have a bunch of loose leaves or printer paper, and we'd like arrange it in neat rows, you know, so that it'd be like my classmates or whatever. And I feel like I vaguely remember myself pretending to be my classmates, but she'd like read stuff and then like ask me questions about it, and it was cool. It was a lot of fun. And so, you know, I attribute her to my love of reading because she made reading fun, but I also enjoyed the stories that I found. I enjoyed telling stories, and telling stories, you know, also for me translated into reading other people's stories. And I don't know if I thought this deeply into it as a child, but, you know, reading more people's stories gave me more ideas for my own stories. So 5, what book series got you into reading? I guess I could have just lumped all 3 of those in together, but I didn't think about that. What book series got me into reading? I truly don't know. I can think of so many things that I read as a child, from Ramona Quimby to, I don't remember what they were called, but I just remember the Amber Brown Is Not a Crayon, and The Magic Treehouse, and I'm jumping all over the place from like kindergarten to like 4th grade. But, you know, there was no one thing. It was just all of the things that I remember that I loved, and just like building upon it. And, you know, Nancy Drew, you know, these books that had multiple parts, it was always exciting to go back and see the latest adventure. And so, yeah, there was no one particular series, but there are a number of series that I still like think back on fondly. Where do you read? That's number 9. I read on this nifty little device right here, my Braille note. Oh! Another unique thing bringing to my channel, I have a tendency to fall into accents, so yeah. It's like a Braille computer, and I don't want to take up a lot of time explaining it, so I will put a link to a video where I show you like blind technology and how blind people use tech. But yes, this doohickey right here, it's portable, and so I can basically read anywhere, honestly. I've read in church. As I'm editing this, I just remembered that I had a tendency to not actually read the Bible in church, since no one could see what I was reading, since it's in Braille. And for me, going to church was often a chore because people were taking or dragging me there to pray for me to get my sight back. This strange notion that I've gotten into in some of my vlog videos. I often read fantasy novels, or in later years, erotica. And in retrospect, I'm like, perhaps that's why God never gave me that sight back that people really wanted for me, because I wasn't paying attention to Jesus. I read in school when I was supposed to be doing work. Actually, also in elementary school, I'd have, you know, Braille books, and Braille books, you know, Braille can't be enlarged or made smaller, so it'd be in multiple volumes, and I would just have the book in my desk, and I just like slip my hands into my desk and just like be reading surreptitiously. Sometimes my like I had a para in elementary school, would notice and like reprimand me, but my teacher oftentimes didn't, because it was about like where I was placed, where I was sitting. And yeah, so the benefits of being blind, people are always like, oh, you can like read whenever, like, if your parents say to turn the lights out, you can just like read on the covers. And yeah, I really can read wherever, and it's great. So now that we have the background on all of my reading habits and all that stuff, we move on to question 10 of those like segmented questions that I repurposed and moved around. What kind of books do you like to read? Predominantly fantasy. Urban fantasy in particular has been my favorite. I love reading how authors imagine supernatural creatures interacting within and around our world, whether they're out of the supernatural closet and everyone knows about them, and like, so what kind of legislature do they imagine to happen, how many freedoms, how many limitations, versus when they're in the closet, in the supernatural closet, and what life looks like for them, and how many creatures are from our collective unconscious, how many of them are real, how many of them feature into the story, what are their relationships, how are they reimagined. I also, I can appreciate some high fantasy, some epic fantasy. I read a little bit of everything though, if it sounds interesting to me. I've read autobiographies, some poetry books. I'm an English major, concentrating in creative writing, and a religion minor, which means consequently I read a lot of varied stuff, like things that are seen as great literature, great American literature, great British literature, and I read a lot of theologians and philosophers, and sometimes those books really impact me and they're really fascinating, and so that's also something else that I will be bringing to this channel. I was really bad about 3, but you know what, it's cool. I'll be talking about, a variety of things, like so long as it interested me and I have enough passion to talk about it, I will be talking about it, because as I said, I do read a little bit of everything, but my preferred genre is fantasy. Okay, now we're back to the regular numbers. We're on 6. What questions would you ask your favorite YouTubers? Ooh, I feel like I would ask what spurred them to create their Booktube channel. I don't know who the first Booktuber was, but I'm curious on the history of Booktube, and I guess that's something that I can easily Google, but I'd like to ask, I'd like to ask who their influences were. Like sometimes there are a lot of people who, and I was definitely one of those when I first started my channel, who are like, I'm awkward in front of the camera, but I'm still doing this, and it's like, why, Was the love of books that pushed you? Was it the love to, or the need to have a book community? And then also, I'm curious about everyone's least favorite book. All of my favorite booktubers, their least favorite books. I feel like sometimes you can learn a lot about a person by their least favorite. Are they impatient? Are they plot driven? And their least favorite book is like very character based. Are they character driven? Do they prefer character driven novels? And their least favorite book is very plot heavy and like skimping on the characters. Alright, and last but certainly not least is 7. What challenges do I think starting a Booktube channel will be the hardest to overcome? Consistency! Sorry, had a change in lighting because, daylight does not last forever. But, so the hardest challenge I think would be consistency. If you look at my past videos, you will definitely see large gaps of time, and there's a number of reasons for that. I don't have a consistent setup. I was in a dorm room before, now I'm back home, but I'm not in my room because we have tenants, and just all of these details that you don't actually need. But all of that to say that I don't have a consistent space or consistent setup, so I usually have to work with my friends and work, make sure our schedules coincide, and oftentimes it does, but something else that I always worked with was inspiration. If I didn't have an inspiration for a video, I wouldn't make a video, and that oftentimes just posed trouble with, consistency.
That's honestly all it really comes down to. But I'm really hoping, I have no shortage on books, so that should not be a problem. It's just going to be a matter of actually sitting down, making these videos, and my goal is to make at least 2 videos a week. I also have tons of ideas, tons of things to say, so I'll definitely be pre-filming and all that good stuff. So hopefully this goes well. Wish me luck. I hope you guys enjoyed getting to know me. Yeah, that's about it. Till next time.